Okay, looks like we have critical mass. First, I want to thank everybody for joining us today on a Saturday, or for some, it's Sunday. We're in many time zones all over the world, from Australia, Indonesia, Costa Rica, and throughout the North America. So we've got lots of representation. As you heard when you joined, everybody's on mute, but if you have a question, you can add it in the chat box, which is on the right side of your screen. You can also minimize that control panel so that it folds in and it won't be in the way of the presentation. At the end of the program, we'll be presenting these questions to our panelists. Also want to share with you that we'll be sharing 3 very brief films, and a screen will pop up on your screen. And to experience the fullest experience of the film, you'll need to maximize your screen so it fills yours. So it'll be small, but you'll just need to have the screen expander on. We're going to dive right in. We don't have a lot of time, so just want to walk you through what to expect and our agenda. We'll be starting with Olani Wilhelm, who's up in one of the boxes at the top. She's our Senior Vice President for the Center for Oceans at Conservation International. Then we will have the 2 co-directors of this partnership, Scott Atkinson from Conservation International, Nick Strong-Svedich from Save the Waves, and it's his birthday, so thanks for celebrating your birthday with us, Nick. Big party for you. And then we'll have an incredible presentation by legendary Shaun Thompson, who, as most of you know, is a world champion surfer, leadership activist, and author. We're really privileged to have him with us. And then we'll have a live stream from our partner, Lizzie Murray, also at the top, who's the founder and CEO of A Liquid Future, and 2 young women benefiting from this amazing work in the Mentawai Islands in Indonesia. It's going to be a big treat. And then we'll wrap with a question and answer. So with that, it is my sincere pleasure to introduce you to my friend and colleague, Olani Wilhelm, again, CI's Senior Vice President for the Center for Oceans. She's worked tirelessly for over 2 decades to protect our oceans and the resources they provide. Olani joins us from Oahu. We should also be so lucky. With that, take it away. Thank you, Olani.
Great, thanks, Louisa. Aloha, good morning, good afternoon, evening, whatever time of day it is for you. Really mahalo. Thank you for joining us virtually today from wherever you are tuning into from around the world. As Louisa said, I'm a Hawaii girl, born and raised in and around the water. So I admit I love this conversation that we're about to have today. And I'm incredibly touched and deeply grateful to be joined today by some incredible luminaries in the surfing and water people world. Brian Keaulana, Titus Kinimaka, Felipe Pomar, Archie Kalepa, and of course, our incredibly accomplished and very generous guest speaker, Shaun Thompson. I'm sorry if there's others of you that I joined and I didn't see you in the list. Really appreciate all that you do in your communities, not only for ocean sports and recreation, the ocean, but to give real mentorship and dreams to younger people. It'd be odd to hold this virtual event without recognizing that the reason it's virtual is that the world's upside down right now in so many ways, right? People are hurting, communities are hurting, nature's hurting. You wouldn't be on this call right now if you didn't deeply understand that these struggles we are facing right now are all interconnected, whether addressing climate change, the current pandemic, issues of inequality or injustice. Nature's vital to attaining a stable, healthy, and just world for everyone. As people who love and care about the ocean, we know that the ocean that the ocean connects us all. It also heals us, literally and metaphorically. It's why we turn to the ocean, particularly in times of pain and need, and come together. Maybe we can put up that one slide. We come together in solidarity and resolve, knowing that together we can turn things around with the ocean beneath, around, and within us. Here are just a couple of images of the expressions of our ocean community from around the world of solidarity. Ocean people are passionate in so many ways, right? We care about our sports, we care about connecting with nature, we care about our communities, and definitely about these places we love We don't like to see when they're at risk. So we work to protect nature and people. And as conservation, as part of the conservation community as well, you know, it's natural to work and to ally with ocean people, surfers, water people of whatever kind, and just everyone who loves the ocean in whatever way. Really recognizing this massive potential, this connection between people who already care for nature and the values of why we strive for conservation. Our organization, Conservation International, and our partner, Save the Waves, joined together to create the Surf Conservation Partnership just a little over a year ago. And this partnership has taken off incredibly, thanks to so many people who are on this, this meeting with us today, who are supporters, and many, many more. The idea is simple, but in its simplicity, there's truly enormous power and potential. Really, it's about helping surfing communities protect and sustainably manage their waves, reefs, coastlines, and forests, and do this across the world, where great surfing waves overlap with places that are critically important for conservation. Communities of surfers in local villages and towns in every country with a coastline are on the front lines of the drastic changes we're seeing around the world. Pollution, climate change, sewage, coral bleaching, and then layer on top everything else we're struggling with in the world. As surfers paddle out every day, they see these threats, they feel them, and they want to do something about it. And that's really where the Surf Conservation Partnership comes in. We're working with these communities to defend their places so their ecosystems, their families, and the global family of all people can really thrive. So to share a little bit more about this effort, please allow me to share with you a short 2-minute film about the partnership. And it'll be followed by hearing from Nick and Scott, who are the leaders of this partnership together. Take it away with the film.
More than 75% of the best surf spots on Earth are found in locations that are critically important for marine conservation. These are places that we love for their biodiversity, natural beauty, and unique cultures. Sadly, these locations are facing serious threats from climate change, pollution, and overdevelopment. But there is hope. In tune with the ocean and motivated to defend it, there are 34 million surfers globally that want to see these special places protected. The potential is huge, so Conservation International and Save the Waves Coalition are partnering with surfing communities around the planet to pioneer an innovative model of conservation called Surf Protected Areas. Surf Protected Areas will safeguard hundreds of surfing waves and millions of acres of coral reefs, forests, and coastlines, including the communities and cultures that call these places home. The first surf protected area is a remote island in Indonesia that has a vibrant traditional surf culture. Plans for massive tourism development are bringing rapid change to this untouched place. So surf protected area partners, with a focus on girls and women, are using surfing to empower communities in their effort to save their natural resources and way of life. Working with the Surf Conservation Partnership and local government, these communities will protect over 30 miles of coastline, 30 surfing waves, and huge areas of pristine coral reefs and forests. They are also creating the framework for low-impact surf and nature tourism, sustainable economies that support conservation and job growth. This is how surf protected areas work. By harnessing the motivation of surfing communities around the world, they offer a powerful new way to expand conservation at a global scale. From Asia to Africa, Latin America to the Pacific Islands, a network of surf-protected areas will safeguard some of the most amazing places on the planet. This is the leading edge of conservation, and we want you to be a part of it. Help save the places we love by joining the Surf Conservation Partnership today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Scott Atkinson. I'm the director for the Surf Conservation Partnership for Conservation International. Thank you, Louisa and Aulani, for the great introduction. And thank you, everyone, for sharing your whatever time zone you're in, your afternoon, morning, or evening with us. We're so excited to share about this initiative, the Surf Conservation Partnership. This Surf Conservation Partnership is doing something that has never been done before, and that is creating a global network of surf protected areas. Now we're utilizing proven approaches and experience, the incredible experience of our partner Save the Waves, which has mobilized surfing communities across the planet for the last 15 years to protect the places they love. The proven approaches that Conservation International has worked on for many decades, over 30 years, to create large protected areas. We're bringing these two things together and creating this concept to create a global network of surf protected areas. We're super excited about it, and I kind of want to mention a few things about the history. If we go back to when we started this idea, we're kind of asking ourselves, can surfing really play this massive role in conservation of these special places all around the world? And we did a global analysis to try to figure that out. Science-based organizations really want to know. And the answer we came up with, not just yes, but absolutely yes. And there's three main elements that are the reason. So the first is places. 75% of the best surf breaks on Earth are located in places that are important for marine conservation. That statistic alone just blows my mind. And you know these places. Indonesia, highest coral reef diversity in the world. Fiji, Costa Rica, Brazil, the list goes on and on. Hawaii, places that are so special where local communities surf. So we have the first thing, places. The second is we have people. There are 35 million surfers worldwide. So the film was made about a year ago. It said 34 million. I guess maybe a million or so surfers have joined our ranks in the last year. And I hear that statistic and I don't know whether to smile or to cry, but that is a reality. It is. There are 35 million surfers in the world, and they are a powerful force for conservation. The last part is what Aulani mentioned, passion. I don't know, I can't think of a group of people that are more passionate than ocean people and people who love nature and love to go out and paddle out every single day. So you have those three things together and you have this incredible combination of why surfing can be a greater force for conservation around the world. So with that, what are we doing? You saw in the film, we're creating this global network of surf protected areas, and we're starting in individual places where local communities are connected to the ocean through their surfing. Nature is so critical to these people for their survival, for their future. And I just want to mention, over the last year, we started our implementation about a year ago, and we are so excited to see the progress that's been made. And I think that's attributable to the passion that these local surfing communities have. A lot of scenes in the film were from Morotai Island, our first surf protected area location. And the communities there have already, in the last year, 7 communities along the coast have already declared, worked on their natural resource management regulations to create surf protected areas at the village level. The government has approved the idea of creating a large surf protected area to protect 30 miles of coastline, the forest from the top of the watershed, and the reefs out to about 5 kilometers. We're now working on the formal process for that now. And so that progress, I've been in the business of helping local communities to create protected areas for the last 20 years. I have never seen it go this fast. And a lot of times with local communities, it takes time to encourage and convince them that protected areas will benefit them from greater supplies of fish or clean water. But with the surf communities, they are asking us to help them. They are, and I've never really seen that before. So whether you're a surfer or a conservationist, the Surf Conservation Partnership is a new and powerful way to expand conservation around the globe. And before I turn it over to Nick, which I will in just a second, I want to just mention one thing about where we are in the world today and why this is so important. It's really that we've seen that as tourism has gone down, tourism is basically down to zero in most locations around the world. And people have had to go back to their villages. People who had jobs in tourism have had to go back to their villages. And what we're finding is that those villages that have protected their forests, that have protected their resources, they're doing better, they're thriving. They have clean water for their gardens, they have fish, they have protein to eat. And for those that haven't protected their resources, they're really struggling. So this concept that people need nature, it's not a theory, it's not just an idea, it's actually being played out every single day across the world in millions of communities. And the Surf Conservation Partnership is supporting those communities, as many as we can, to basically save the nature that they need to thrive and that we as a global community need to thrive. And with that, I'm just going to turn it over to my dear friend and colleague, and happy birthday, Nick Strong-Svetich, the Executive Director of Save the Waves Coalition, our partner.
Thank you so much, Scott, for that lovely intro, and thanks to everybody from CI doing all the organization, and especially I think this was the only way I could get Sean Thompson to come to my birthday, so I'm even happier. You know, I just have to take a side out to talk a little bit about partnership and what that means. And for us, I think we're just so grateful to have CI involved as a partner on this and as our core partner, because really they're the only large conservation NGO that would look at something like this and see the innovation, see the potential. I know all the other ones would sort of gloss over it and not see the true value that I think Scott has explained so well. You know, and from our side at Save the Waves, you know, over the last 15 years, as Scott said, we've had some successes and protected about 100 surf spots around the globe through our World Surfing Reserves, our campaigns or projects. But we set a big goal of protecting 1,000 by 2030. And the honest truth is that we won't get there without this partnership. We're going to set a huge amount of those important places that we care about around the world will be realized through this partnership. And so I just want to underscore how important it is for us. But I think, you know, I found myself asking a lot in these really dark and depressing times, like surfing, conservation, protecting these places, like, does this even matter? Like, do we even care in the time of COVID where people are getting sick and we're seeing numbers spike and we're sitting with this kind of looming economic crisis? And I think as I've reviewed this and just talked with partners all over the world, I think it matters even more than ever. And the thing that it really strikes me is that almost every community from California to Costa Rica, from Peru to Portugal, from Italy to Indonesia, all these ocean countries have at some point been on a lockdown where people could not get in the ocean. And so I think behind all the other crises we see of, you know, the economic stuff and the pandemic stuff, is we also really see a crisis of well-being. And we now have this study, this kind of weirdly thrust upon us study of what does it mean when you're not in the ocean and you can't get to the places you love. And I think that, for me, is what makes this so important, because we see how much people need nature and need to be immersed in these places. You know, I've watched the videos on YouTube of the guy at Malibu getting chased by the Coast Guard just so he could sneak out and get a wave. I've seen the video of the person in Costa Rica that's getting shot out by the police. There is this demand in surf communities and in surfers to be in the ocean and be at these places that we care about. So I think not only do we sort of know what it means to now lose a spot, we also know how much we need these places as surfers, as ocean lovers. You know, so I think it's a really unique time because, you know, I think as you can see on the slide, I was walking around my neighborhood earlier this week with my son, and I kept seeing this. We're all in this together, and seeing that sign throughout my neighborhood made me really think. Well, we've all now know what it means to lose a place that we love and not be able to go to the ocean place that we love. And so now I think we realize that we're all in this together to be able to protect these places for the long term. And so I think that's really what's at the heart of the Surf Conservation Partnership, is that it's bigger than our individual organizations. We need to step out of our organizations. We need to step out of our identities, and we need to really just step into something bigger than ourselves. So for us, every single person on this call can help be a part of that, because we now know what it means to lose a place and be disconnected from what we love. And so all of us can be part of the goal of protecting, you know, the 1 million hectares of coral reefs and mangroves and waves, and really protecting, like, you know, over 300 waves in the places that we love with the communities that really want it. And I think that's what really makes this this partnership transformational. So, you know, of the places that Scott mentioned we're going to work, we're already working in Indonesia. We've got plans to work in Costa Rica. We're working in Fiji, and then we're going out from there to see more and more places as demand grows around the world. And so I think in kind of a transition point here, you know, our next speaker has surfed many of these places around the world and has surfed it much better than I have. And so I'm gonna introduce Sean Thompson in just a second, but I wanted to take just a minute for a story of how I met Sean. I met him in Southern California a few years ago, and I kind of said, "Hey, Sean, I'm going to be going to Jeffreys Bay. Can you tell me anything, any tips, any?" And he kind of said, "Well, no, not really." So I get to Jeffreys Bay. I paddle up for the first time, just go through the little keyhole, and this set comes on the outside and it kind of hits the reef and just stands up. I see this little figure just drop in and make this big turn and just race down the line with incredible style. And then as he kicks out and paddles back up, I look, and there it's Sean. And I go, "Oh, so you're just going to show me the tips and not tell me." So with that said, I'd like to welcome Sean Thompson, who is just an amazing human being, obviously a world champion surfer, incredible surfer, transformational within our sport. But I think what moves me about Sean is just the depth of his character. He's also a leadership and resilience mentor. He's been an entrepreneur. He's an environmentalist, kicking off the Surfrider Foundation as one of the founding board members. But he's also very, very intelligent, has a master's of science and leadership. And what he does now is really motivating people around the world. He speaks at Fortune 500 companies everywhere. He works with kids at schools about how to really activate the power of purpose to create really transformational change using his code method. And so he's going to talk a little bit more about that, but please welcome my friend and just wonderful human being, Sean Thompson.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks for that great intro. And I really like to start off by thanking all the activists, all the staff members and the board members on these wonderful NGOs, on Conservation International, and you, Nick, and your group on Save the Waves. It's so amazing to see the people that are involved in the surfing community and in the environmental community that are giving of their valuable time. And for everyone that's on the live stream today, our lives are so busy now, and so much is happening, and it seems like the world is in just this incredible state of flux and what to do. I've been doing live streams over the last 3 months to tens of thousands of people, to very large companies like Gilead, who invented the first cure for COVID, and all sorts of toll road companies, construction companies, and people are suffering right now. And it can be described as a simple acronym: SAD. People are stressed, people are sorrowful, people are anxious, people are angry, man. People are angry about the racial injustice and what's been happening in the world. And people are depressed and despairing. And it's like we've had two massive waves, like this cleanup set here at Waimea Bay from the 70s, that have just wiped us out and wiped out everything before them. And what I really wanted to talk about today is that the power of these waves, and how all of us have this power inside us to ride the next wave that's going to be coming. Because I will promise you, I will absolutely unequivocally state that the wave that is coming for us now is going to be unlike anything that we've ever ridden before. And this is, if you can go to the next slide, this is a little word cloud that really is indicative of the tens of thousands of people that I've spoken to over the last 3 months. I've asked people to send in words in one word that describes how they're feeling. People are hopeful in a very small minority. You can see all the negative words: anxious, uncertain, worried, frustrated. And certainly Nick alluded to it, and Alani alluded to it, that the sea has this great power to heal us, and waves have this tremendous power to connect us. And I'm going to talk today about this power, this power of purpose, but underlying it all are these waves that we ride. If you can go to the next slide. So when I speak to groups around the world, and I've been doing it for the last 20 years, and I love doing it, I talk about a simple code. The code's just a set of values. And the code that I've developed from riding these amazing waves around the world, like Waimea Bay, these iconic waves. This is the Banzai Pipeline in Hawaii. Many of the iconic waves I've ridden have come from Aulani's amazing island of Oahu. This simple code that I've developed helps inspire and uplift It connects others with each other, and it helps activate this special power that we've got inside us called the power of purpose. A lot of people ask, if you can go to the next slide, what's purpose? Purpose is power, and it's a higher calling, and it's a simple self-organizing set of life aims that stimulate our ultimate goals. I like to say there's 5 elements of purpose. This little acronym I developed. Purpose is aspirational, inspirational, moral, authentic, and timeless. Our purpose yesterday is the same as our purpose today, and it will be the same as our purpose tomorrow. And interestingly, if you can go to the next slide, this is why purpose is so important in our lives. How about this for a statistic, a study of 80,000 people? Having purpose in life makes you live longer. In fact, it makes you live twice as long. So for people that are involved with NGOs, activism, people that are involved in making a difference in the world and transforming themselves and others, you're going to live longer. And also working with a sense of purpose leads to engagement, motivation, productivity, and retention, all sorts of positive benefits. So for me, my purpose in life has really been defined by iconic waves. So this is one of the reasons why I just love this whole concept of protecting world-class waves and the marine ecosystems around it. If you can go to the next slide, Malibu in California. In 1984, I got a call from a guy called Glenn Henning, who said to me, Sean, Malibu's facing a severe environmental challenge. I'm starting the world's first surfing environmental group. We want you to be a founding member. We want you to write the copy and give a picture for our first ad. If you can go to the next slide. And this is what I wrote. And these 5 words have become a touchstone for my life. Do a good turn today. Really, really simple. So I show you this because for all of us that love surfing and love being involved with environmental groups and making a difference, it comes down to just writing down the words that can be a guidepost for you. Then, a number of years later, if you can go to the next slide, the same guy, Glenn Henning, phoned me up and said, Sean, your adopted home break of Rincon, which is where I live 10 miles away from Rincon, I live in Santa Barbara in California, is facing a severe environmental challenge. I want you to help me solve this problem. All the homeowners were connected to septic tanks. When it rained, the septics would fill up and the crap would flow in the water. He said, I'm going to bring a group of children down to the beach, 100 kids. You've got a $100 budget to do something to inspire these kids. There was no organization. It was just one surfer wanting to protect the ocean in the same way that CI and Save the Waves are doing these amazing initiatives around the world to protect world-class breaks. He said, Sean, think of something that unique that you can give to 100 kids that we're going to bring down to the beach, along with the media and the government officials and the state government, to activate the consciousness of this environmental problem. So like I'm thinking, like, what can I do for $100 for 100 kids? So I went home, and what I did next, I will absolutely promise and state that it changed my life. If you can go to the next slide, I picked up a sheet of paper. You can just go to the next slide, and I wrote 12 lines, every line beginning with I will. And I wrote it in 20 minutes. And I wrote down the fundamental lessons that surfing had taught me about life, that surfing at Rincon and Malibu and Banzai Pipeline and Waimea Bay had taught me about life. Not how to be the greatest surfer in the world, not how to ride the tube, just the fundamental lessons it teaches us about camaraderie, brotherhood, connectivity, respect, passion, bravery. And then the last line, which was dedicated to my hero, Duke Kahanamoku, I will honor the sport of kings and the wonderful culture that Hawaii has brought to the world. And I printed up these little cards, 100 cards. It cost me $100, and I handed out 100 cards to 100 kids. And I will tell you that this little course of action changed my life, because what I did is I stated and I committed to a path forward. And I gave these cards out to the kids, and the kids loved the cards, and the moms and dads loved the cards, and the government officials loved the cards, and the media loved the cards, and it turned into a groundswell. Ultimately, we solved the environmental problem, but these cards kept on rolling, just like the waves that I've spent my life riding. And out of the card came a book. If you can go to the next slide. I collaborated with a friend, and we wrote a book called Surfer's Code, which became popular. And then I was sitting out at Rincon on another day, and a guy paddled up to me and said, hey, Sean, I'm a headmaster at a local school. We'd love you to come and talk about Surfer's Code at the local school in Santa Barbara. We only have 80 students. So if you can take to the next slide. I went out to the local school, it's called Anacapa School, and I started chatting to the kids about Surfer's Code. And I said, Surfer's Code's my code. I wrote it in 20 minutes, 12 lines, 105 words. What about your code? What's your purpose? How are you going to find your path? Where are you going to find your power? I said, write your code. Do it just like I did it. 12 lines, write it in 20 minutes. You can go to the next slide and the next slide. And about a week later, go to the next slide, I got these codes back from the kids. 80 kids times 12, nearly 1,000 lines of code. And the very first line of code I got back from a 13-year-old is, I will always be myself. And those words spoke to me at a deeply emotional level. How about that? A young kid going, I'm not going to be pushed around. I'm not going to be victimized. I'm not going to be subjected to peer pressure. I'll just be myself, like raw power. And I cried when I read those lines because I'd lost my beautiful son a number of months before from a bad decision. And I realized that when kids can write their codes, they can empower themselves and they can empower each other. If you can go to the next slide. So I wrote another book and with Patrick, and every single chapter title is dedicated to a young person. And every single chapter title is written by a young student. And there were 12 chapters, and every single chapter is an exploration of these particular statements, with the very first one being, I'll be myself. So now if you can go to the next slide, kids all around the world write their codes. Sometimes they'll do them in a graphic form. I will live out loud. If you can go to the next slide. And I will let my dreams outshine my fears. Go to the next slide. Just keep running these slides. And I found that this concept of dropping a stone, starting a ripple, building a wave is profound amongst youth. You can go to the next slide. And I thought, is it possible to create a positive wave across a nation? So I did an experiment. I went back to my homeland of South Africa, and I thought, if I can go and visit the poorest schools and the richest schools, getting kids to inspire each other with words of purpose based around the simple equation, the simple thesis, will equals power. So I called it the Positive Wave School, and we went to a, next slide. I did 35 schools, 60,000 students. And if I, in my mind, I thought, if I can get these kids sharing their codes in a network, we can impact through positivity, power, and emotional contagion, millions and millions of kids. Go to the next slide. So we printed up hundreds of thousands of these badges. Next slide. And I started out on my journey. And my first school was a school in a very, very small area in Johannesburg in a place called Katlehong. And while South Africa is no longer a segregated society, South Africa became democratic in 1994 with the election of the greatest leader of the 20th century, Nelson Mandela. There's still stratification by economics. So the very poor schools are often populated only by Black students. So now it's one of my first schools, and I'm a little bit nervous about how these young students are going to connect with my message, because most of these students have never been to the beach. They're 600 kilometers from the beach. They certainly know nothing about surfing. These are students that every day is a fight out of poverty. Every day these young people have hope, but very little food and very few economic prospects. And I thought perhaps these young students are going to perceive me as being part of the problem. They're going to see me as a vestige of the apartheid, of the segregationist society. And the day before, a person phoned me up and said, Sean, I'm from China Global Television. We run the biggest TV station in the world. We beam out to over 1 billion people. We want to do a story on you empowering young students across South Africa. We'd like to come and cover your first tour. I said, listen, I'm very nervous because I don't know how these kids are going to relate to me. And also, you know, kids, there's no filter. If kids think you're a wanker, the kids will tell you straight away. There is going to be absolutely no filter. I said, maybe you can come a bit later in the tour. She said, I'm a journo. I'm covering the first event. And this is what she discovered. And I want you to hear and look into the soul of these amazing young students. Play the video.
Surfer Sean Thompson is one of South Africa's finest sporting heroes. Famous for his style of riding the tube section of the wave, Thompson won the International Professional Surfers World Championship in 1977. Considered one of the 10 greatest surfers of all time, he now inspires others to follow his paddle. In this underprivileged school in Katlehong on the east side of Johannesburg, Thompson shares with youngsters a simple strategy for confronting everyday challenges and making positive, life-changing decisions.
It's so wonderful to be inspiring some young kid in Johannesburg or Durban or Los Angeles, anywhere, just to know that you drop that little pebble in the water, and what's it done? It's created a wave. And that wave is going to go and touch lives.
In 12 personal stories, Sean shares the power of I Will, a code that carries him through life.
While yes, this little code that I wrote, 12 lines that I wrote so many years ago, was about surfing, it's like every line is a metaphor and can be interpreted in so many different ways. It's about how you can be a good person, how you can be a good human being, how you can make a difference in the world, how you can impact others. So I've been on this journey for 10 years now, since I lost my beautiful son. And surfing was this constant. Surfing helped get me back on the path to healing again.
Many of these teenagers have barely seen a beach, but the code has resonated among them.
I will achieve my goals. I will be better. I will dream big, and I will be who I want to be.
I will arise and shine, and I will face my fears, and I will take charge of my life.
Although all these youngsters were born after apartheid, many of them are still trapped by poverty. But the code is giving them courage to change their lives.
In this country are deprived right of opportunities, and I will break that cycle of being deprived of opportunities, and I will create opportunities for myself.
This book will give me the courage that I don't have. I think it will give me that power to do what I want to do and to believe in myself.
Sean Thompson's The Code is about many things: faith, courage, creativity, determination. But above all, it's about promises we make to ourselves, about the future, and to turn hope into action. Julie Shara, CGTN, Katlehong, South Africa.
How awesome were those young people? I mean, the power contained in those voices. If you just go to the next slide, it was, when I saw that show, I just went, wow, you know, these kids have nothing but hope. I went right across the country. Go to the next slide. If you want to just go to the next slide. So I went across the country to these, perhaps the PowerPoint has become a little frozen here, but anyway, I went across the country to these amazing schools, just connecting with kids at a deeply emotional level and getting the kids to really connect with each other. This was Elon Musk alma mater, got the kids to write the code, and you can see what they write. I will change the world, the first kid, and I will be a conqueror, the last kid. If you wonder where Elon Musk got his mojo from, he got it from that school, I think, partially. If you can go to the next slide. So this was an amazing school. I asked the kids, can someone share one line of code to inspire everyone? It was like 3,000 kids. No one wanted to move. Eventually, the little girl in the right-hand corner walks up in front of everyone, puts her arms in the air and shouts, I will be a strong black woman. And the place just went absolutely bananas. And then all the kids got up there. I'll be a doctor. I'll be a physicist. I'll be a lawyer. It was wonderful to see how these kids inspire each other. So now this whole code concept, when you think of it on the surface, it seems so juvenile. If you can just go to the next slide and the next slide. And now I do it with all sorts of groups. This was a prison, Santa Barbara County Prison with 1,000 prisoners. Go to the next slide. I do it with athletes. I do it with rehab clinics, if you can keep going. I do it with athletes. This guy went from 25th to 3rd, an amazing Hawaiian warrior, in one event after writing his code. This team in rugby went from last place in the league and won the equivalent of the South African Super Bowl 2 years ago. I'm not saying the code is guaranteed to have a transformational change, but there, in writing and affirming and finding your own path, there is tremendous power. Now I work with some of the biggest companies in the world. If you can go to the next slide. And in one's own lines, you can see Google, GM, Cisco, Disney. Go to the next line. And what companies do is they'll create a code on the fly. This is a data company in Santa Barbara. I will stay hungry and curious always. You can go to the next slide. So what we're going to do now is there's going to be a little call to action here, and we're going to get all of you to write one line of code, because the human condition, the ultimate mission of all of us in life, can be defined by 2 lines of code. One is I will be better, and the other one is I will make others be better. Every single line of the millions of lines of code I have read falls into one of those tributaries of the river of life. So all of us now, we're going to text. If you can go to the next line, and this is how we're going to end the presentation, my version of the presentation. If you can go to the next slide. If you can go to the poll everywhere slide, you're all going to write, if you want, one line, one sentence, beginning with I will, that's reflective of making others better. I will what? Something to make others better, something to make the world a better place. One commitment. Here, we got them coming through. I will stay stoked. I will always lead with kindness. Let's see what else comes up. If you can change, you might be able to change the visual to, yeah, well, I will channel my energy for good. So you can text it, or else you can, I will always leave with kindness. I'll be my best. You see, what these words do is a psychological phenomenon. It's called emotional contagion. It's a wave of emotional contagion. And Facebook and the National Academy of Sciences did a study of 689,000 people a few years ago, the biggest social study in the history of the world. And they showed that all of us have great power through emotional contagion to influence the world around us virally. Every single one of us, Scott, Nick, Louisa, Lizzie, Arlani, every single person out here has great power. I will lift others up. I'll be empathetic. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful words. So I encourage all of you, write your code, 12 lines. Every line begins with I will. Sit with your family, sit with your spouse, sit with someone you love, write your code. 12 lines, every line beginning with I will. Write it in 20 minutes and share it. And within that code, I promise you, you'll create a positive wave that will roll right across this earth. I will aim for the impossible. Thank you. So now I'd like to throw you over to Scott, who's going to continue on with the live stream. Scott.
Sean, thank you so much. That is so inspiring. We will clap, those of us who you can hear. Thank you so much. And I can't imagine a better person to introduce next after what Sean has just shared with us. This is Lizzie Murray, the founder and executive director of A Liquid Future, who seems to have lived by Sean the code her entire life. She's dedicated her life to helping the young people of Indonesia to empower them through the magic and power of surfing. And she is our partner on the ground in our surf protected area sites. And with that, I just would like to introduce Lizzie to take it away.
Okay, thank you very much, Scott. Hello, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to meet you all and be a part of this great event, sharing A Liquid Future's experiences using surfing as a platform to empower local communities in some of the remotest corners of the planet, where electricity, phone and internet signal and roads have just arrived in the last 5 years, and education standards are among the lowest in the world. In these few minutes, I would like to just give an insight to what is behind A Liquid Future, what we're doing now, and what we're hoping to achieve, and just how excited we are to have come in contact with Save the Waves and CI and be a part of just this incredible conservation partnership. For me, it's like a dream come true, and for all the communities I work with too, it's really wonderful. So on my first surf trip to the Mentawai Islands in 2011, the locals at the village of Katiet asked me to help them gain skills they wanted and needed to understand what was happening in their own backyard, and that was surf tourism. And I was struck by a feeling of something far greater than me and that I'd ever felt before. And in that moment, I decided I'd change my life. And alone, I moved to the Mentawai to see if I could help. By living with the locals and running activities, I began to understand the potential had amongst these communities as a springboard from which to achieve so much more, increasing self-expression, self-belief, gender equity, global context, environmental awareness. And that was because surfing was accessible and relatable to them, and they just loved it. They were so passionate about it. 5 months later, A Liquid Future was born, and I've lived with the locals in Mentawai and Morotai ever since. From our experiences together, the locals and I have co-designed A Liquid Future's empowerment programs. And by empowerment, I mean the sharing of skills and knowledge from both sides and the provision of the right resources where there is a lack. Our programs are in surfing and ocean conservation, English and creative media, and computer skills and entrepreneurism, which continue to evolve as locals increase their skills and input more and more into the program's design. We lead students on a journey of self-expression, self-belief, and connection, using English, photography, videography, computers, swimming, surfing, snorkeling, and marine conservation, providing resources and opportunities to foster global citizens in these remote areas where rapid development is bringing great change, so they have the tools and the means to make informed decisions for their communities and our planet. We have a particular focus on empowering girls, and latest research shows providing access and education to girls is one of the most cost-effective solutions to global climate change. We have 3 centres, 2 IT labs, and 2 local staff teams. We work with local schools, universities, and governments, and we have empowered over 2,000 youth. In the next 3 years, we aim to have our syllabus included into the Indonesian national curriculum, open centres in the Solomon Islands upon invitation from the locals there, and have our programmes included into the Surf Conservation Partnership. In this way, we hope to assist youth with the skills and the resources they want and need in a manner which is relatable to them, that they're really passionate about and connect to, and therefore has scale. We're now going to see what that future looks like by meeting Fuji and Nida, 2 of our first female students at A Liquid Future's second centre in the Mentawai, which we set up in 2015. After following our programs for 5 years, they are the first girls from their villages to swim, to surf, to speak English, to have confidence to engage with tourists and take action to preserve the marine environment. They're now ready to lead A Liquid Future's programs once COVID restrictions are lifted. We're so excited about this. Students have already registered and are raring to go. And I hope this will give you what it does me, and that's great hope and belief that we can overcome the pressing and broad issues our world is facing. So let's meet these extraordinary trailblazing women helping us all on that path through surfing. I think we're going to go to them now. Due to the time difference, it's very early where we are, and also just to be aware of technical aspects, we're going to watch a short video which we made in the last few days. All the waves you see, all the action is from the last few days. They're incredibly excited to share this all with you, and we'd love you to all be a part of this. And again, thank you so very much for sharing your time with us today. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Fuji. I'm from Mentawai, Indonesia. We have good spot surfing. We have beautiful, wonderful jungle trekking, and we have beautiful diving.
Hey, my name is Nidar. I'm from Mentawai, Indonesia. Surfing means to me freedom because when I'm surfing, I forgot all of my problem and I feel free. A liquid teacher is great for our community because they teach us how to speak English, how to surf, and I feel more better to teach other children what I have learned. Jangan lupa tangannya, jangan lupa tangannya.
A liquid feature greatly changed my life. One, in the English language, I gain confidence in meeting tourists. I can also increase my appreciation for nature by surfing.
My concern about community and environment is there's a lot of plastic pollution because lots of people littering, and I want to clean up my environment and invite the others to do the same.
I want to continue the move to reduce the plastic waste and do not throw the rubbish to the sea. I also want to continue to teach English on the younger generation so that they can compete with the world. With English, life will be easier. So I think English is important.
Goodbye. I hope to see you in here, surf together with me, and go to the jungle, and I will teach you how to climb coconut tree.
I hope I see you in here. Goodbye.
That was amazing. And actually, Fuji and Nidar are here with us, but we haven't been able to get their video ready or set up, or working rather. I don't know if you guys can say hello, if you hear me.
No, it's on.
Hello.
Okay.
We hear you.
Yeah.
Hello.
My name is Nidar. Nice to see you guys.
Hello, I'm Fuji. Nice to see you.
Hey guys.
That was so wonderful and completely inspiring, and means a great deal to all of us. Speak on behalf of the audience for you to be here and share your story. And Lizzie, that was it's magical. It completely blown away, and just really can't thank you all enough. And we might have some questions for the three of you when we get to the end. And we'll make sure to share information about A Liquid Future with our guests so they can learn more and see some of this amazing work from themselves. You have a beautiful website, Lizzie. So thank you all so much for being here at all these various spots in the world. Before we head into questions and answers, I just want to share just a little bit about how you can get involved. There are a few ways that we would love and need, anyone's participation. One way is ideas. We're just a little bit over a year old. So whether it's marketing ideas, site expansion, create any kind of creativity, any and all, we'd be grateful. Number two is share a bit about the SCP with your friends and colleagues. We'll be happy to provide you with all the arsenal you need to share with anyone who you think might be interested. We'd be really grateful. It's kind of where we've come from, where we've grown. And lastly, of course, financial support. We can't do all this amazing work without the resources. So, of course, any sort of contribution we're grateful for. And with that, I'm just going to share, we're going to share a screen with Scott and Nick's contact information in case you'd like to learn more, get involved, and we'll follow up with everybody on with this contact information. And in addition, we have in our text box the Surf Conservation Partnership website donation page. So, yep, there it is. It's in the text box. If you'd like to contribute, of course, any amount we're grateful for, and it goes a long way. The guys are nimble and get a lot done with very little amount. So just really grateful to have you with us and love to tell you more. So we'll follow up with that. So now I think we will go to questions and answers. We have a few in the hopper already. In the text box, you can send any question you have and we will start to field them. To start, I'm going to share with you the first one. I think this is for Scott or Nick. Can you please explain more about the surf ecosystem and how it plays into the partnership?
I could take
that.
Yeah, so I think we kind of, in working a lot in this partnership, I think we came to realize that there's sort of a unique new attribute in conservation, which is the concept of the surf ecosystem. And that's really a combination of three things that are really equally important. One is, how does the breaking wave form? What's the bathymetry, the geography, the geology of a place that makes these places so special and makes incredible waves? There's not waves everywhere in the world, right? There's only select places. The Surfline data set is about 3,500 waves that are rideable across the world. There's projections of 5,000 to 6,000. So it's not everywhere that there's a rideable wave. So that's a special feature in and of itself. We also notice that generally around the conditions that create a breaking wave also is great habitat for a number of species, and that's where we see the biodiversity pop up. So that a lot of times waves are either a reef pass causes a wave, or a river mouth, or a dune ecosystem, or mangrove system, or an underwater canyon, and all of those are tremendous habitats in terms of biodiversity and productivity. And I think the third, as we've seen and touched so eloquently on by Fuji and Nidar and Lizzie, is that the human communities are really dependent on these places for well-being, like I was talking about, for the economics, like Scott was talking about, and that's what we see is a critical element. Why it's so powerful is that we've included humans in the definition of an ecosystem, which is where they always should have been. So, Scott, I don't know if you want to add anything from that, because you're much more of a technical expert when it comes to conservation than I am. But yeah, pile on, please.
Yeah, sorry, Nick. Maybe just a tiny bit that what we're doing with the Surf Conservation Partnership, a lot of times when people hear about this concept, they think we're just protecting or focusing on the waves themselves. What we're really trying to do, and which is critically important, is protect these larger ecosystems, the watersheds that make sure the water is clean. You can't surf in dirty water. The reefs need to be maintained that protect and create the wave shape. So the waves are the central feature and the focus, but we're using them as an anchor point and an entry point for the conservation of much larger areas. And we said that in the first video, that in our first site, it's 30 miles of coastline. And by the end of by 2025, our goal is to have over 2.5 million acres of coral reef, coastal forests, coastlines under conservation. That's equivalent to the size of the big island of Hawaii. It's 100 miles by 40 miles. If you think of it in size, if you go for a drive, that takes quite a long time to do that. So we're getting and bringing in all the things Nick mentioned for the surf ecosystem, but the much larger surrounding ecosystem as well in terms of our conservation approach.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. We have a great question and a comment. Have we connected with the World Surfing League regarding it possibly promoting the cause on their tour? And P.S. Sean rips.
We have some of our friends from the WSL on the call right now. I think Reese Pacheco, who's the executive director of WSL Pure, I believe is on the call, mostly because he was heckling me via text while I was on the call. So I know he's there. They're great partners of ours. They've been really supportive of the partnership, and I think there's a lot of overlap between all of our organizations, especially on their coming 30 by 30 campaign. So check that out. It's about to drop soon.
Awesome, Nick. Thank you. Actually, we have a question from Reese. Nick, can you share some of the thinking behind Surfonomics and how there is an economic empowerment story in this work as well?
I'm gonna punt this one to Scott, because I think if you're okay with that, because I think you had a really good, you've got a really good grip. I can give some background, but one of the points that you were making, I think, touches on that, why it's important now.
Yeah, sure. So the Surfonomics methodology, it would really has been pioneered by several people, good friends of ours, and Save the Waves has done it around the world. This is basically to look at the economic value that a wave generates for the economy, for the local people. Just give you an example. Well before COVID, years ago, we did this in Uluwatu in Bali in Indonesia. Many of you will have heard of that wave or surf there. World-class wave. $35 million a year generated from that wave into the local economy. And you can imagine if people didn't have that economic generated by the wave, that economic value generated by the wave, what would they be doing? They'd have to be fishing, farming, doing other things that could have potentially negative impact on the environment. The concern is when surfing communities or tourism communities become too dependent on tourism and leave behind the resources that have sustained them for centuries. So as we are in this situation with COVID, it's kind of interesting to look at, with tourism down, what will be the recovery of surf tourism? And Nick says this all the time. We think that because of how intrepid surfers are, the first tourism to recover will be surf tourism, and that will generate economic benefits for local communities and surf areas again. So this methodology is fantastic, and it shows governments, it shows other people, these places are valuable and they need to be protected, because if they're degraded, people will not come and those economic values will not be there.
Thanks you guys, that's great. A question for Sean. What do you see as the intersection between the code and the Surf Conservation Partnership?
You know, the code is a simple tool to activate purpose and to activate power to take positive action. So it really underlies everything we do. If someone has a desire to take action for the ocean, but doesn't really know how to get it done and doesn't know how to affect that change internally before they start external change, just write your code, 12 lines, every line begins with I will. So it all starts with a purpose. It all starts with finding, refining, and defining your purpose. And that's what the code does. It's such a simple tool to do it. A number of universities have studied this process, because when you want to look at, like, what's my grand life vision, it's complicated. But when you just get out a sheet of paper and you write down 12 lines, every line beginning with I will, it simplifies it. So the connectivity between ultimately what you're going to do and how you get there, that's the code. So that is the bridge between conceptualization and action. The little code, it's just like a little bridge.
So I can say, I will raise $1 billion for the Surf Conservation Partnership. And
perhaps that is your purpose, or perhaps that's a goal. I've found that, you know, generally when people write their code, it's more, like I say, aspirational, inspirational. It's generally not like a SMART goal, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time sensitive. It generally has those elements of aspiration, inspiration, morality, authenticity, and timelessness. But I've worked a lot with Rotterdam University, with the School of Management there, and they have a whole goal-setting concept. But first comes purpose, then comes goal, and then comes the change. It's interesting. It's how it cascades. It's such a simple tool, and millions of people have done this. It's so simple. It's bloody simple. And I like to say it's open source code. It's free. Use it how you want. Use it with whom you want. share it. Surfing gave it to me, and I'm giving it back.
It's
kind of like
such,
aloha, Alani. It's so connected, the whole concept with Hawaii and aloha. And where I grew up, where the Zulu nation have this philosophy called Ubuntu. Ubuntu means this brotherhood and connectivity, and it's so related. I mean, that's why, you know, I think as surfers we have this sort of almost this sort of connectivity with the culture of Hawaii and what Hawaii represents. It's just sort of, it almost becomes part of our DNA. It's like wonderful. And it was so wonderful to hear you speak, Alani, and, you know, hear that sort of Hawaiian lilt in your inflection and in your articulation of words. It just like takes me back to such a special time of my life. You know, my father in 1946 was recuperating from a shark attack that nearly killed him. He wanted to be an Olympic swimmer and recuperated, had hand surgery in San Francisco, stayed in the Royal Hawaiian Hotel, recuperated on the beach, and met all the Kahanamoku brothers, and they took him under his wing. So my roots in Hawaii go back to 1946 when there was 2 hotels on the beach, the Moana and the Royal Hawaiian.
that's amazing. Yeah, that is, and the word cloud, by the way, that was really special to sort of experience. Thank you for that, Sean. That was cool to see. Yeah, that was amazing. I have a question for Fuji and Nidar, if you guys can hear. What does it feel like to be some of the first female surfers in the Mentawai?
Yeah, it's Nidar. It's so feel great because you know in Mentawai not a lot of women be circle, so I just feel happy and great. I'm being like star in Mentawai because yeah, I'm big circle in here, so great. I just feel great.
That's awesome. I have to confess, I don't know how to surf, and so I've made, this is my code after watching that I will learn to surf. So thank you for sharing. That was really amazing. I might watch the film 10 more times. I have a question, Scott or Nick. This is great. Where are the most immediate concerns for waves that are in danger?
Nick, that's you, buddy.
Right under the bus. You know, it's interesting because one of the things that we've found is that sometimes long-term conservation is born out of emergency. And so we've had a lot of requests recently from people in the Maldives that are saying during the COVID, they're just building everywhere without a lot of forethought or compliance with environmental regulations, and a lot of the waves are getting completely destroyed from the north in the Malay region down to the south of the country. We've had multiple people sort of writing in about their waves just being destroyed. You know, different either tourism development infrastructure or marine infrastructure like ports and things like that, which is again not bad. Fishermen need to be able to go in and out of a port. But I think it comes back to the surfonomics element is that, you know, they are giving up an economic resource, potentially, the government without even analyzing it. And so I think there are the folks on the ground are very interested also in the long-term conservation of their areas. So what are the laws and protected areas that can be put into place? I think Bali, as Scott knows, has had a number of waves lost on it. And so I think people in Bali are really receptive to this concept of surf protected area networks, in that they've lived through seeing one of their favorite places or their waves destroyed, and what that does to the sort of surrounding community and the ocean environment. So there's a number of other ones. There's one in Mexico. We could go on, but it doesn't seem to stop, even though the number of surfers in the world is growing exponentially. Somehow the number of waves just being destroyed senselessly doesn't seem to stop, and we keep getting demand for helping on campaigns, and it's a little overwhelming. But I think if you focus on a long-term goal of turning a grave situation to a positive conservation outcome, we have a lot of opportunity out there. So.
Could I just add one thing to that? Sorry. I think something that Save the Waves has worked on and we're now working on in the Surf Conservation Partnership are laws that basically have waves be an asset class for when you go to do development. They are considered in EISs, and that's not very common in environmental impact statements. That's not very common around the world. So yes, we're creating this protected area network, and that will be sites to protect biodiversity. It will stop development that would be destroying the waves or the ecosystems, but also just when countries can pass laws that basically say when we're going to build anything, we have to consider how it will affect waves. And that has happened. I know Save the Waves has helped to lead that in Peru and Chile. It's being proposed for Costa Rica and other places. So that's one way that these endangered waves that we've lost because of piers or people taking stones out of the river or whatever it is, that will hopefully help in the long term.
And actually, we had a follow-on question that I think you really well addressed, but I'll read it in case you want to add. Is part of the plan to bring tourism and people to some of these sites? And our friend says, I'm concerned about population impact over time. And so I know that you're building that into the broader plan. And so if you want to just kind of comment on that.
Is that the one that perhaps Lizzie could address?
Yes, I could, concerning Morotai, where we're doing the first pilot program, and surfing there is really just the locals and literally a handful of tourists. So looking at carrying capacities and having scientific information at what level do you reach when it's too many tourists and there's too many stresses, whether that be, on the terrestrial land or also in the ocean, are very significant. And I think it's a problem that absolutely needs to be looked at. And the Surf Conservation Partnership has it as an intrinsic aspect of its model to protect these waves. So yeah.
I think just to follow up on that, one of the things that comes up, and you said it, Lizzie, is the carrying capacity. I know we've worked a lot on the Gold Coast and in New South Wales a little bit, because they have a massive overrun of crowd. I mean, the crowds are like none you've ever seen. It'd be 5 miles of people in the water, solid, shoulder to shoulder. So they're figuring out ways to deal with that. And I think in some of these places like Morotai, the surfing is less developed, so that you can, and people there are smart. They're starting to travel. Some of the locals have lived in Bali. They know what the flip side is. And so part of it is planning the tourism infrastructure with the carrying capacity in mind. Because one of the other things we see is a lot of the surf tourism is foreign owned. So the more that it can actually benefit locals by having capacity and owning the economic outcomes of surf tourism, that strengthens the case for the protected areas. Whereas if you're foreign owned, you don't quite care as much what happens as long as the surfers are coming and going and paying, because you don't suffer the consequences day in, day out by being of that community. So I think those are kind of two planning aspects that, that this is pretty new to kind of a radical concept of like, how do you want your tourism to look like, not what tourism did you end up with.
Mm-hmm.
Can I add to this, Lisa? Oh, no, go ahead, Lizzie, if you want to follow on to Nick.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yes, I was just going to say, that's exactly right, the diverse components that it brings together in terms of, transportation links, working with local governments, and yes, in Morotai, that they're aware of these stresses because 2 of the local surfers have lived in Bali, and they talk about having to have their entry number for a wave in Bali, and that it's like going to the bank and waiting with their ticket in the bank for a couple of hours to see someone, whereas in Morotai that's not the case, and they much prefer it that way. So yeah, I think it's a conversation that has many diverse components to it.
I think just the thing I would add is there's such a diversity, and part of the power of a global network, a partnership like this, why we're really excited to be part of this, is really to share those lessons, right? You have, and in Hawaii, where I'm from, right, we have a lot of lessons about what happens when places get loved too much, right? And I think sharing those and being able to communicate and understand what carrying capacity really means when it's not being put forward, or when kind of pan surfing culture takes over, right? There's a danger with that too, is that you actually have a risk of losing the story of Sean's dad at the Royal Hawaiian Hotel, recuperating, meeting, you know, the kahanamokus, right? What a blessed story, right? Those stories get changed and rarer as if you lose those connections and to those places. So I think it's really important, and I thank whoever raised that question. This is one of those really important foundational issues that this partnership has the opportunity and the challenge of really sorting out. It's a great thing to want to go and protect special places and to do it with people who are absolutely passionate. And how do we learn from that spectrum of places really wanting to have an appetite for quality tourism, but from the places where, you know, that got away, and making sure, and that's not that it's too late in Hawaii. Actually, COVID has been a really interesting experience here, where people living here are really looking and saying, wow, 10 million tourists a year, 12 million tourists a year, is that really how, you know, what do we do from here? How do we reimagine a future where we can love our places, where we can have those quality experiences, where the kahanamokus would even be in Waikiki anymore, or any of their, you know, where Hawaiians and that connection would actually still be there. How do you not lose that? So I didn't mean to go on too long, but I really love the focus of that question, and it's one thing that we really have to strive to get right in this partnership.
We might have lost Louisa.
All right, thank you everybody for your participation in today's presentation. We really appreciate it. Heads up, there is a link in the chat function that will take you to the page that Louisa mentioned before her internet went out. So we are going to leave you with that. And thank you so much, especially to all of our presenters and Sean Thompson, for your time today.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks. Can't wait to see you all in person.
We look forward to more questions.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so much. Aloha.
All right. Thank you all so much.